Call to order the May 23rd meeting of the Cary Town Council. And at this time, I would like to go over some changes to the agenda, but first, I would ask you to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As I jumped ahead a little bit, our first order of business is to adopt the agenda. There are changes to the agenda tonight. The applicant for item 4.2, Weldon Ridge, has requested the item be removed from the agenda and returned for final action at a future date. Staff has requested the removal of item 4.10, Swift Creek Land Management Plan Second Amendment. This item will return for action at our June 13th council meeting. Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
I will just like to make a quick point, if that's okay. I think citizens might wonder, why is the Weldon Ridge proposal being removed from the agenda? And I think the reason why is because several council members expressed consternation with the plan as it's presented. I know for myself personally, I wasn't comfortable with the stacking queues and the amount of green space, play space that was available for the number of students that they were projecting. So that was where the concern lay for me, and I'm not sure what it is for other people, but I wanted the citizens to understand why this was being removed, or why the applicant had chosen to remove it. I think that they didn't think they would have a positive review today.
Okay, very good. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We move to recognitions, reports, and presentations. We have a Scout member. I'm scanning the audience. They did walk in from Troop 216 working on a citizenship merit badge.
Left.
To the left.
Up there.
Up high.
Ah, there you are. Thank you for being here, and we'll recognize you for being at our council meeting. Thank you so much. We have the 40th Cary Greenway's 40th anniversary proclamation. Cary Greenways is where I spend a lot of my time. And the town is celebrating our 40th anniversary with year-round events. And our big celebration will be on National Trails Day, June 1st at Bond Park. And we have UNC Rex Healthcare as a partner with the town, and in this proclamation of healthy and active lifestyles, and is our premier sponsor for this event. And I would invite Greenway Chair Committee Jim Bustrak and UNC Healthcare Representative Emily Ziegler to meet me at the podium for a presentation. This is the last council meeting, and so to get me back in the spirit of the thing, I need to do like a proclamation with a few whereases. So I hope you bear with me. This is a good one. Recognizing 2019 as the 40th anniversary of Cary's Greenway system, whereas the town of Cary completed its first Greenway in 1979 and therefore desires to recognize 2019 as the 40th anniversary of the town's Greenway system and to celebrate 40 years of Cary Greenways and all that the community has accomplished. The town invites the community to join in the celebrating with year-round events and a signature celebration at Bond Park on June 1st, National Trails Day. And whereas in the 1970s, a Cary citizen, Miss Linda Setliff, noticed the Cary High track team practicing by running on Kildare Farm Road, a then 2-lane road with no shoulders, and approached her Cary Town Council members about providing a safe off-road walkway or trail system for use by the track team and others. And whereas on February 26, 1976, the Cary Town Council, seeing the value of an interconnected system of trails and green spaces linking all parts of town, adopted via a resolution the concept of a system of greenway corridors to be used for recreation purposes, open space, and for pedestrian, bicycle, and other non-motorized circulation. And whereas the Cary Town Council desired to involve citizens in the planning of the greenway system, education of the public about greenways, and development of a greenway program, and on April 22nd, 1976, adopted a resolution creating the Town of Cary Greenway Commission, and on March 22nd, 1979, with input from the commission, the Town Council adopted a comprehensive greenways and parks plan. And whereas today, the Town of Cary has grown its greenway network to over 80 miles, connecting neighborhoods to destinations throughout the town, as well as to adjacent communities. The greenway system is used for recreational and transportational purposes, supports healthy and active lifestyles, and greatly enhances the quality of life of Cary citizens and the economic vitality of our community. And whereas the Town of Cary has received national recognition as a result of its expansive and expansive, well-maintained greenway network, with repeated designations as a bike-friendly and walk-friendly community, and as a National Recreation and Parks Association Gold Medal winner. Now, therefore, I, Harold Weinbrecht Jr., on behalf of the entire Cary Town Council, do hereby recognize 2019 as the 40th anniversary of the Town of Cary Greenways, and proclaim Cary's ongoing commitment to provide Cary citizens with a highly functional, safe, well-maintained greenway system. And I call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens, proclaim this 23rd day of May, 2019. Thank you.
I don't know if we've had a proclamation that lengthy in quite some time. But I guess when you have 80 miles of greenway, it's going to take a little bit.
Yep. And it's really, even in the last 30 years, I moved to my house 30 years ago and remember running on the shoulder of roads. And now I don't have to deal with cars at all. So
Was Uncle Fred on that council?
Yes, he
He
was.
was mayor then, wasn't he?
My uncle was mayor at that time. All right, let's move to our second item under recognitions, reports, and presentations, and that's the town manager's update, and I'll recognize Town Manager Stiegel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. A couple of quick items. I wanted to let the council know that per the suggestion of Councilmember France, I had a great meeting this week with Dan Pike and Dave Doomers to talk about the downtown farmers market. I was very impressed with the strides they're making, as well as their commitment and enthusiasm, not only for the market, but also for everything that's happening downtown and in Cary in general. I let them know that the town would meet them where they're at, meaning that if they want the market and our partnership to grow, they can count on us to do our part. So, and in that spirit, I'll remind everyone that the downtown Cary Farmers Market is open Saturdays, including this one, from 8 to noon in front of the Ivy Ellington House at 135 West Chatham Street. And then while town offices will be closed on Monday, we invite everyone to our annual Memorial Day Remembrance at 2:30 p.m. at our Veterans Freedom Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stiegel, and I believe, Mr. Smith, you'll be speaking at that Memorial Day service, right? All right, we now move to item number 3, and that's the attorney's update on the Hawthorne at Parkside Apartments versus Town of Cary.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to announce that the lawsuit brought by Hawthorne and Evolve in 2018 relating to some conditions in a development plan approval has been fully and finally settled, and the lawsuit dismissed with prejudice. And details of the settlement are attached to the agenda in the settlement agreement and also available from my office.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. We like the dismissed lawsuits. That makes us happy. Okay, we now move to Public Speaks Out. The instructions for speaking at Public Speaks Out are on the printed agenda. And if you'd like to speak, please take a seat in the rows to my right that are shown as reserved and follow the instructions on the printed agenda. Public Speaks Out speakers have 3 minutes each for their comments, and you may speak on any topic as long as it's not a public hearing and that works to your benefit because public hearing speakers have more time. The 3-minute time limit will be enforced, not to be rude, but to be fair to all of our speakers. And there's a timer on the podium. When it starts, it'll be green. There'll be a green light, and when you have 30 seconds remaining, it'll turn to a yellow light, and when your time is expired, it'll turn into a flashing red light, and that's the time. I'll interrupt you again, not trying to be rude, but trying to be fair to all of our speakers. To help have an efficient public speaks out item, we ask that groups have a spokesperson to speak on the behalf of the group to reduce repetitive comments. And if you would like to speak after the current speaker, I would ask that you stand in the aisle over there so that, one, we know there's another speaker coming, and two, it's more efficient. And when you walk down the steps, make sure you hand the clerk your card, which has all your information on it, so we may contact you again if we need to. I thank everyone in our audience for understanding that this is a business meeting. Please do not applaud or make remarks from your seats or anything else that may distract from this meeting. So now's the time for Public Speaks Out, and I would invite our first speaker forward.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Jamie Loyak with Hager Smith. I'm here this evening to talk about PDD amendment case number 18 REZ 27, Redstone Entertainment. At last council meeting, we had requested that it be pulled from the agenda to have a little bit more time to meet with owners to address their continued concerns. And we did that. We had a little bit of oversight initially, and we wanted to basically make things right. And we met with them on site, 2 neighbors, and the Wessex Homeowners Association president about a week after the council meeting. We had a productive and great meeting. We explained that based on some of the recent changes, Redstone was reducing the parking that they needed on site, somewhat which would directly affect them in a positive way. Therefore, we no longer need a 10-foot buffer along the side. We're only asking for a 20-foot. We explained that we would also put limitations to the light poles heights. We were only have to move one. And then we also shared images of the type of vegetation that we were proposing as far as our type A buffer. They seemed to like what we were proposing. And to assure the neighbors, we made the modification to the PDD amendment for the following items. We increased the 50-foot type A buffer to a 50-foot average, with no portion being less than 50 feet. We're only asking for 245 spaces now rather than 260. Well, excuse me, we're only on-site total. So it was only we're decreasing 15 spaces. We also offered up the fact that we'll do no illuminated signage on the western facade of the building or the south side of the building, southwest side of the building. We felt it was good dialogue. We appreciate your time, allowing us that time to talk to them. I think it was fairly positive. I think they came out thinking it was a win-win for everybody. So I just want to thank you for that time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, mayors and member of council. My name is Glenda Topp with Glenda S. Topp and Associates. I'm here tonight to address an item that's on the discussion item list, and it's the Cary Point rezoning. It's 18 REZ 12. The rezoning was submitted back in April of 2018, and we have been to the Planning and Zoning Board, and I would like to just update you on what's happened since the Planning and Zoning Board. At the Planning and Zoning Board, the board voted to deny the request. At that time, the applicant was still working with Transportation and Facilities to come up with the appropriate transportation improvements for the site. They had not gotten to that point yet, so staff recommended, or actually said, that the proposed PDD did not comply with the policies of the Cary Community Plan, specifically the MOVE chapter. Since that time, the owners of the property have continued to work with staff. They have proposed, and the town has accepted, the additional zoning conditions that address the transportation improvements. Staff, as you know in your staff report, is recommending approval. And we believe that the primary reason, although there were other concerns raised by the board, the primary reason that the Planning and Zoning Board recommended denial was the fact that the transportation items were not addressed. What the applicant is requesting is that the council consider the case tonight, and that you will vote for it and that you will vote to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Travis Flewitt with Kimley Horn Associates, here on behalf of the applicant for Cary Point as well. I just wanted to highlight some of the transportation commitments that Glenda referenced and talk about the transportation process. Glenda did reference that there was some concern about the approach we were trying to take previously, particularly involving the additional eastbound left turn lane on Morrisville Parkway onto NC 55. We were trying to do a cost-sharing agreement with some of the other developments that were in for rezonings, and there was some concern expressed that the language of that agreement would not result in the actual construction of that improvement. So at staff's recommendation, we're taking more of a divide and conquer approach to the improvements in this area to improve capacity on Morrisville Parkway, which is going to be needed with the interchange and the extension of Morrisville Parkway over 540 to the west. So specifically what Cary Point is proposing to do, they have frontage widening on Morrisville Parkway, which is required per the LDO, but it's a significant amount of widening given the size of this site. It's a very long and narrow site. They have about 1,000 feet of frontage on Morrisville Parkway that will result in 2 eastbound through lanes on Morrisville Parkway, all the way from Sedgefield Park to 55. They're providing connection through the adjacent site out to Sedgefield Park, that full movement access. They are constructing a westbound right turn lane on on Morrisville Parkway into Sedgefield Park. And as you will hear later, talking about the divide and conquer approach, the Twyla North development is committing to install that second eastbound left turn lane on Morrisville Parkway onto 55. Cary Point is committed to provide any additional right-of-way needed for that left turn lane, as well as a potential future right turn lane from Morrisville Parkway onto 55. No one's committed to do that, but staff had recommended providing right-of-way for that in case it's needed in the future. So a number of improvements that are being provided to improve capacity along this section of Morrisville Parkway. We worked very closely with staff. They were great to work with, specifically Anna and Priyatham spent a lot of time with us working out those commitments, and we think we have their support now, and we would ask for your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mayor Weinbrecht and council, thanks. My name is Rob Shear, and I'm here. I have no special interests. I'm just a private citizen. We lived in Cary. My family's been here since '73, and I was glad to see you make the proclamation about the greenways. My family enjoys it regularly, many times a week. It is one of the things that makes Cary absolutely special. One of my colleagues, I work for Verizon, one of my colleagues from the Czech Republic is here. I loaned him my bike. He's been all over the parkways and all over Lake County Crabtree Park, and he absolutely loves it. And I would tell you that the money you're spending for these 80 miles of greenways is well spent. Again, you guys have millions of dollars of budget and so many people demanding your attention and resources, and I just want to, again, thank you for your continued commitment to what is happening here in Cary. We were also, part of the Cary Greenway or Cary Green Neighborhood program that Suchi Gupta has helped us with. They helped organize and put a rain garden in our backyard, and we're passing that along. We're helping other neighbors build rain gardens, and again, I just want to just tell you how much it means to live in a green community. I love driving home, seeing trees. Those places that are a little older and don't have so many trees in the parking lot, they look kind of a little run down or whatever, but keep up the greenery. I appreciate it very much. Just know that it's one of the things that makes Cary special and why we love living here since '73. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for Public Speaks Out?
This is great help.
Hi,
Hi, my name is Carrie Riddell. I live in Cary. I live in the Weldon Ridge neighborhood. I wanted to thank you, I think, for removing the rezoning item from the agenda. This is the first town council meeting I've attended. I have 3 kids, my husband and I. They're 2, 4, and 6. We moved to Cary. We could have lived anywhere in the United States, and we chose to live in Cary in large part because of the safety and because of the coordinated way you all have managed Cary's growth, and also because of the greenways. And I wanted to let you know that we're really concerned in Weldon Ridge about maintaining the safety. We're concerned about the developer's request to increase the properties on that space and to move the school. My kids bike, we run, we use the American Tobacco Trail all the time, and we're really concerned about cars coming through there, high schoolers potentially coming through there. It's really important to us. So if that comes on the agenda, I'm not sure how it works, but I hope that you vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, I've talked with staff earlier today about citizens that are going to want to know, when is this coming back? How will we know? You know, and so what we're going to do, I talked with the clerk, we're going to gather all the emails, all the speakers, all the contact information. When a date is decided, we're going to blast it out to you guys so that you know. So just so you'll know. Any other speakers for Public Speaks Out? Seeing no one, we'll close Public Speaks Out. Somebody else? Is that a yes?
To line up again.
Sorry, I thought there was actually going to be other folks that would wanted to come forward and speak. My name is Misha Locklear, 16-plus year West Cary resident. You've seen me a few times before at other hearings. I just wanted to take this opportunity. I know that the Weldon Ridge has been pulled from the agenda, completely understand the background there, but just wanted to make an effort here tonight to, number one, thank all of the council members, especially Ms. Robinson for all of the correspondence, you, Mayor, for recent correspondence with me and exchange of information, emails, and insights. I want to kind of reiterate that there has been a lot of engagement from folks in the neighborhood for, against. I just wanted to take a moment to kind of clarify once again that the school that's proposed, it's not the school that we object to specifically, it's how the school is being packaged and presented to the town. As Carrie mentioned, the prior speaker, safety is and continues to be on the forefront of our mind. And I'm hopeful that in this time that it's been removed from the agenda, that Mr. Anderson and I can continue dialogues. We've spoken a couple times here in the last week. I'm just really looking for and hoping for some follow-through on some of the items that he and I have discussed. With this particular parcel of land, I think it's pretty safe to say that it's become a gigantic thorn in everyone's side, and we all want to put it to bed, myself included on that. Again, I really hope that by working more closely with Mr. Anderson that there will be some follow-through on that, because again, to be clear, this rezoning case is for double the number of housing or homes in the area while leading with a school that's in phase 2 of the building process, which is a little concerning to me because with all the talk, it seems like the school is top priority. So if it's top priority, I would think it would be in phase 1. Again, I'm glad that it was pulled from the agenda tonight. I'm glad that we're giving it more time and more discussion, and I'm hopeful that there will be some more follow-through in a productive manner to address some of the safety concerns. Because at this point, with all of the feedback that council gave at the last hearing, as well as planning and zoning, I'm not yet convinced that that Mr. Anderson and team have put the best possible proposal forward, and I feel compelled as a citizen to make sure that we collectively voice our concerns so that we absolutely get the best proposal. Even some of those things that maybe you legally can't ask for, I can. So I'm happy to do that. And thank you so much for your time and your service.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Council. Good to see you all again. Looking young as always. Great. Ryan McCormick, and I am from Cary Park. and I just wanted to address real quick the proposed rezoning that's been tabled for right now or postponed. Thank you. I just want to say that, again, this has never been about a school, it's been about safety. And that area is designated for a school. That land particle is designated for a school. So we understand that a school has to go there, okay? The people there have accepted that. But the idea that the land is going to be rezoned in order to put a school plus other housing in there, that would completely cause a safety being compromised is what we're most concerned about. So when I was younger, when I spilled milk, my mom's like, okay, well, that's your milk. You have to clean it up. It's your responsibility. Well, the developer bought this land. They knew what they were getting into. They knew that that land required a certain development. So I think it's their responsibility to accept it for what it is and not just ask everyone to undermine the entire process to accommodate them because they haven't been able to figure out how to utilize that land. That's very important. It's really important. It really comes down to safety. Safety and safety of our neighborhood. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Ms. Top, you've already spoken.
Can I speak on another point?
No, we're at Public Speaks Out.
Oh, so I only get to talk about one project?
That's right. You have 3 minutes to talk about anything you like to talk about.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yep. Yes.
She's new. You're groundbreaker.
She's new.
Sorry about that. Anyone else to speak at Public Speaks Out? Anyone at all? Last call. Okay, we're going to shut down Public Speaks Out, and we're going to move to the consent agenda. This is item 4, if you're following along. And for the benefit of people watching our meeting on TV, we're going to take a moment to review the consent agenda items. Please keep in mind that one vote approves all of these items. On the consent agenda, we had the Weldon Ridge PDD amendment, which has been removed. Remaining are the 18 REZ 29, the 2832 Carpenter Upchurch Road rezoning, 18A03 Geneva Lloyd Baker Ayers annexation, 19A04 Melba L. Goodwin annexation, 18 REZ 27 Weston PDD ONI 1C amendment, recognition of sponsor for June 1st 40th years of Cary Greenway celebration. NCDOT Schedule C and D municipal agreements for the maintenance and operation of traffic signals. And I just lost my screen. There it goes. Walker Street infrastructure improvements. We've removed the Swift Creek Land Management Plan, Second Amendment. We also have bid award for Preston's 30-inch sewer repairs. And based on those, I've heard from council members that would like to pull 18 REZ 27 Weston PDD ONI 1C amendment from the consent agenda. And I would ask council members, would they like to pull any of the other items from the consent agenda?
No. Nope.
If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
There's a motion
Second.
and the second discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And that takes us to public hearings. Same rules apply for public hearings that applied for Public Speaks Out, except for one thing. You now have 5 minutes for your comments instead of 3. Our first public hearing is on the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget, and our Chief Financial Officer, Karen Mills, will present this item, and we will open a public hearing following her comments, and council will not take action this evening. Ms. Mills.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have some introductory comments to
Oh,
make.
sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Public engagement is a necessary and essential ingredient of a well-functioning government. All public engagement activities share the same basic objective of making government work better by bringing it closer to its citizens, enhancing accountability, building trust, and instilling a sense of purpose and direction. Budgeting is a fundamental activity that symbolizes an explicit agreement with our residents, that being private resources or tax dollars are collected in exchange for public services and benefits that fulfill community priorities and objectives. Our citizens rightfully expect us to deliver on that promise, and I believe we continue to do so. I believe the proposed budget meets our citizens' expectations and has been directly drawn from the objectives explicitly stated in the Imagine Cary Community Plan, which represents our citizens' vision of our future. We have a lot of priorities ranging from public safety to recreation to other high quality of life measures like well-maintained streets and a walkable, connected community. Tonight's meeting provides one of many opportunities for citizens to participate in our decision-making process. Citizen voices should and do make a difference in our priorities. And this is the formal opportunity and time and place to hear their thoughts about the budget for the fiscal year that begins July 1st. And with that, I'll turn it over to Karen Mills.
Good evening, Council. The budget for FY 2020 that begins on July 1, 2019 totals $336 million. It's 3.4% less than the current year budget and does not raise taxes. It does include a $2.50 per month increase in solid waste fees, which will cover 85% of the cost of solid waste services. A challenge that we faced this year was an increase of almost $1 million in the cost to process recycled materials. In the good news, the budget recommends a 2% utility rate increase instead of the 3% that we had anticipated in the past. This recommended budget maintains our current service levels without any increase in employee positions. It focuses on maintaining our infrastructure. More than half of our capital budget funds maintenance projects. A few highlights of the budget include investments and a continuing priority for technology, public safety, and employee development. And as you've experienced over the last 2 years, we've enhanced our financial management through what we've called a rolling budget process and the publication of quarterly reports. Through quarterly reflection, forecasts, and rolling budget adjustments, we're highlighting the town's financial oversight all year long. Part of that financial focus includes outreach to our citizens throughout the year about the budget. On a monthly basis, through social media and the Bud newsletter, we encourage our citizens to share their thoughts about the budget. We provide multiple ways for citizens to tell us what they're thinking. Email, phone, Twitter, Facebook, all of these ways. Citizens have the opportunity also to comment at any of your regular public speaks out portion of your regular meetings. Any citizen comments that come in by social media, email, or voicemail are shared with you in the quarterly reports throughout the year. Tonight is the first of 2 special opportunities at this key point in time in the budget development process for citizens to address council in the form of official public hearings. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to highlight the next steps in the budget process. As I mentioned, tonight is the first of 2 scheduled public hearings on the budget. The next public hearing will be held on June 13th, and the schedule anticipates that council will adopt the budget on June 27th to prepare for the fiscal year that begins July 1. Thank you for your attention to this crucial component of our fiscal management that enables the high-quality citizen services that we value. And now is the time for the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. And as she said, now is the time for the public hearing on our 2020 proposed budget, and I would invite our first speaker forward.
Hi, good evening. My name's Ellen McClay, and I'm here from the YMCA of the Triangle. And I came to thank you for your support of the YMCA of the Triangle in the budget for this year through the grants for nonprofits. As you know, the community organization of the Y, we exist to support the community through youth development, through healthy living, and through social responsibility. Swimming, physical activity, basketball give residents an option to be healthy and have fellowship with others. For our youth, we have track out camp, summer camp, and youth programs to support families who need child care. Local funding allows all to participate in the Y, regardless of their ability to pay. We thank you for your support. We've asked for support to allow children to participate in our Y Learning after-school tutorial program, where this year we're working with teachers to provide extra literacy instruction, and we're partnering with NC State PhD students to help with our accountability for that. So we're excited about that and have a more intensive support academically, but continuing the social and emotional development and physical activity. This also will support children through our Camp High Hopes. So we are grateful for your support and thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak at this public hearing? Anyone at all? We'll close the public hearing on the proposed budget, and there will be another public hearing at our next meeting on June the 13th. We now move to our second public hearing. It's on 19A02, John Stephen Swigger annexation. Planning Manager Wayne Nicholas will introduce the item. Council may take action. Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. This request is for annexation of 2 acres of property located at 1711 Wakena Road, about 1,400 feet south of the intersection with Indian Wells Road. The annexation will also include 0.75 acres of adjacent right-of-way. The property is contiguous to the corporate limits. It's located within Cary's ETJ and it's currently zoned residential 40. The request is not associated with a development plan or rezoning. The property contains a detached dwelling that the owner wishes to connect to town water service. And in accordance with the town's regulations, the property must first be annexed before it can connect to utilities. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. So now's the time for the public hearing for 19A02, and I would invite our first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing on an annexation? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions, comments, or a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve annexation petition 19A02.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to sell them some water and sewer.
Any other comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. We now move to our third public hearing, 18 REZ 30, Twyla Road, North PDD. Senior Planner Katie Dry will introduce the item. Council will not take action on this rezoning tonight. It will be referred to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation and will return to us at a future date. Ms. Dry.
Good evening, Council. This is a request to rezone 36.94 acres at the intersection of Morrisville Parkway and NC 540. The site is on the northern portion of Morrisville Parkway. It sits just north of a future interchange at 540 and is next to the Friars Gate subdivision. The site is currently developed with detached dwellings on lots between 2 to 5 acres. Most of these homes were built in the 1980s. The interchange at Morrisville Parkway and 540 is under construction and will be open later this year. And once open, this site will be the only interchange between Green Level West Road to the south and Highway 55 to the north. Highway 55 sits about 2.3 miles to the north, and Green Level West Road is 1.8 miles to the south. As you look at the assemblage of 13 properties with this rezoning, you will notice it does not include one parcel on the west side, Twyla Road. This 1.78 acre property is owned by the town of Cary and was purchased in 2010. At that time, the alignment of Morrisville Parkway Extension was still undetermined, and the site was purchased with the anticipated need of future right-of-way. With the interchange currently under construction, there are improvements scheduled to be installed on a portion of this property later this year. And upon completion of the interchange project, the town will evaluate the future need for this site. The current zoning of the properties is R40 and Watershed Protection Overlay District. The applicants are requesting to rezone to Planned Development District with no changes proposed to the Watershed Protection Overlay District. The proposed sub-districts of this PDD include RMF tract, which stands for Residential Multifamily. The proposed use on this tract is up to 420 multifamily units. There is a C1 tract, which is the commercial tract, which is proposing up to a hotel with 200 beds and a maximum of 10,000 square feet of commercial and office designation. There are also 2 open space tracts, OS1 and OS2. Within the C1 tract, again, this is a commercial tract, the uses that would be allowed are listed here on this slide, some of which include indoor kennel, bank, restaurant, offices, hotel, retail and personal service establishments, and a vehicle filling station. The site is impacted by stream buffers, and as you can see, they impact the site along the eastern property boundary and also run along the existing Twyla Road alignment and along the northern property boundary. The site's also impacted by topography. It drops roughly 50 feet as the site moves towards the northern property line. Looking at the transportation plan, this dashed line shows the future Morrisville Parkway extension, which will soon cross NC 540, opening up east-west traffic. And the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Facilities Master Plan does not indicate there are any parks within or adjacent to the site, but as you can see from the map, there will be a network of greenways and street-side trails. The Panther Creek Greenway, which is just to the north of the site, is under construction and will be completed in early 2020. With an evaluation of rezoning requests, staff looks to the guidance of the Imagine Cary Community Plan. A preliminary analysis has been completed at this point. The analysis will continue as the case moves forward to the Planning and Zoning Board. The site is within a commercial center of the Future Growth Framework map. The Imagine Cary Plan defines commercial centers as having a shopping center of about 5 to 10 acres or more, and uses that are predominant within a commercial center generally include commercial uses, with office and multifamily as incidental uses. We have an opportunity to view how the entire commercial center may develop. There are active development projects at all 3 sections at this commercial center. Plus, we have the construction of the new interchange. The interchange will include a roundabout, which will provide access to the ramps to 540. The loop on the southern side of Morrisville Parkway, east of 540, impacts some of the properties within the commercial center designation. So once the right-of-way associated with the interchange is removed, the commercial center may look more like this. As you can see, the commercial center narrows on the southern side of Morrisville Parkway, east of 540. Again, active development projects at all 3 sections of this commercial center are submitted with the town. This includes an approved development plan for the shopping center on the east side of 540. This is called the Lowe's at Greystone Shopping Center and is proposing a Lowe's grocery store. It has approximately 70,000 square feet of shopping center anchored by a 50,000 square foot grocery store. I'd like to note that this plan was approved in 2015, however, it has not yet been constructed. There have been a few plan extensions requested, and there was a recent facade revision to the plan that was submitted by the town, or submitted and approved by the town in 2019. Along the eastern side of 540, there are 2 active rezoning requests submitted to the town. One for Twyla North, which is the site tonight, one for Twyla South. I'd like to note that the applicant for Twyla South is a different applicant than Twyla North. When we look at the cumulative proposal for both cases, however, there's up to 600 residential units between the 2 cases, a mix of multifamily and townhouses, and a lesser amount of non-residential uses. What's proposed includes a hotel and up to 22,000 square feet of office and retail uses. Staff has also looked at the proximity of the site to nearby commercial uses. Commercial uses on this map are shown in red with office in purple and other nearby non-residential uses in pink. This map shows the subject site and its proximity to nearby commercial, office, and other non-residential uses within 1 mile and 2 mile radiuses. The Imagine Cary Plan provides guidance for the location and distribution of commercial centers across the town, the intent of which is to accommodate daily shopping and service needs, such as grocery stores, banking, dry cleaning, all within a half mile to a mile of most households. Moving on from the analysis of commercial and office uses, the Imagine Cary Plan speaks to housing in the Live chapter. The plan indicates that the housing mix should accommodate a diverse mix of households further that there should be a mix of housing options in developing parts of town. The housing mix within this site within a 2-mile radius includes 63% detached dwellings, 21% townhouses, and 16% multifamily. And if this rezoning request were approved with up to 420 multifamily units, the percentage of multifamily would increase from 16 to 18%. The LIVE chapter also speaks to encouraging a mix of housing options in developing parts of town. This site is clearly in a developing part of town. The town's active development map shows several development projects in this area in various stages of development along the Morrisville Parkway corridor. A traffic study was completed which evaluated 12 intersections within 1 mile of the site boundary. This is a requirement of the Land Development Ordinance. And as a result of the site-generated traffic, several improvements have been identified. 2 improvements are being proposed through zoning conditions by the applicant. This includes a westbound right turn lane at Morrisville Parkway at the side entrance and a second eastbound left turn lane at Morrisville Parkway and Highway 55. At Morrisville Parkway, the study recommended 4 turn lanes, and the applicant's offering to complete 1. However, this improvement probably adds the most value of the 4 turn lanes at this intersection. There was a neighborhood meeting held on January 9th of 2019. This is a requirement of the Town of Cary's Land Development Ordinance. There were 17 attendees present. Questions and concerns that were raised from nearby residents were regarding traffic, proposed commercial uses, and the height of the non-residential uses. Since the neighborhood meeting, staff has received a few emails and calls with concerns regarding the request. However, today, staff has also received additional information noting concerns from nearby residents. For the neighborhood meeting and the public hearing, notice of the proposed rezoning was mailed to property owners within 800 feet of the site. The public hearing notice was also posted, including signs and notice on the town's website. Cary's practice of mailing public hearing notices to properties within 800 feet exceeds the minimum requirements by state law and the town's land development ordinance. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here to share comments, and following that and the public hearing, staff's available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Try. At this time, I'll invite the applicant forward for their remarks.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Glenda Top with Glenda S. Top and Associates, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant GCI Acquisitions. I know I have a tendency to go on a bit, and I know time is short, so tonight I am going to mostly read my presentation so that I can hopefully stay within 5 minutes. This request is to rezone approximately 36.8 acres from R40 to Planned Development District. The subject property is designated as a commercial center on the Future Growth Framework map. I am going to focus on how this rezoning complies with the Cary Community Plan. From a town-wide comprehensive planning perspective, the Twyla Road North site appears to be a good candidate for commercial center designation for which it is currently identified on the Future Growth Framework map. From a bird's-eye view mapping perspective and sound planning principles, its location in the northeast quadrant of the Morrisville Parkway NC 540 interchange makes sense for such a designation. However, no 2 commercial center designations on the Future Growth Framework map are alike. Each one must be evaluated based on its own unique set of circumstances. At the site-specific and neighborhood level, there are significant constraints affecting the site that indicate that a more typical commercial center type of development scheme is not a good fit for this site. These constraints include topography, site visibility, natural drainage, and circulation. During the public hearing, another member of the team will go into the specifics of these constraints. Retail and incidental office development are key components within commercial centers. We are acknowledging this by offering a new zoning condition that increases the amount of commercial square footage from 10,000 to 15,000 feet. We have also included, from the time we started the rezoning process, we've increased the acreage from 3 to 7 acres. This is important in that now if you go to the looking on the map, if you look at the map in our commercial C1 track, the commercial uses will now go all the way to Highcroft Drive at the intersection of Morrisville Parkway, because that's part of the Friars PDD, and it was approved many years ago for 22,000 square feet of non-residential commercial uses. Looking at the area around the NC 540 Morrisville Parkway interchange, there is approximately 120,000 square feet of commercial development planned or proposed. This includes our 15,000 square feet, the 72,000 square feet of retail where the planned Lowe's Food Shopping Center is located. There is, as I just said, the 22,000 square feet of approved commercial development within the Friars PDD, and the 12,000 square feet of commercial uses that are proposed with the rezoning to the south on Twyla Road. By aggregating all these pieces together, in our opinion, the commercial center designation at this location has been achieved. The staff provided a map tonight that shows existing and approved commercial and office development within a 1 to 2 mile radius of the proposed rezoning. The planned Lowe's Food at the Greystone Shopping Center is between 1/2 and 3/4 of a mile from the subject property. By also looking at this map, you will see that within a 1 to 2 mile radius, there is a large number of residents in this part of Cary that have access to goods and services. I also want to point out that within the PDD, we are providing an extensive private circulation system along with required sidewalks and a street side trail adjacent to Morrisville Parkway, which will allow residents to have access to Cary's Parks and Greenway system. Appropriate and effective comprehensive planning begins at a town-wide level, including developing goals, objectives, and policies to support and implement a plan. Translating a community-wide plan with land use designations such as commercial center requires respect for the plan's intent and policies, but also requires recognition of the site-specific conditions and constraints, as well as the evolution of land uses in the area surrounding the site. Just briefly, the description of a commercial center in the Cary Community Plan includes both predominant and incidental. The commercial uses are the predominant land use, and it does define this between 5 to 10 acres. We are proposing a 7-acre site, and the uses that are being proposed are those that are typically found within a commercial center, including restaurants, personal service establishments, a coffee shop, and uses that you would typically see in a commercial center. As part of our commercial center, we are also proposing a hotel that would be located within our C1 area, and we feel that the hotel is an important asset to this part of Cary, particularly given the location of the U.S. baseball facility. We do believe that the amount of commercial development that is either planned or proposed, the amount of square footage that is proposed at this intersection is appropriate and enough and does satisfy the town's designation for commercial centers. We do not believe any additional commercial development is needed. The incidental uses include office and multifamily. Staff pointed out in this 2-mile radius, there's 16% of the housing stock is multifamily. They also pointed out in the staff report that a couple of the policies in the LIVE chapter are met by providing the multifamily housing. Also want to note, and this will be talked about more when we get into the constraints of the property, given the topography, the stream buffers, we feel that the location of the multifamily development will take into account the sensitive nature of this land, the environmental constraints, and we feel that the multifamily will do a better job of saving these features during development. Given the constraints of the subject property, the adjacent and nearby residential homes, along with the combination of proposed and approved commercial retail uses, the size, scale, and percentage breakdown of the non-residential and residential uses being proposed complies with the Cary Community Plan. The plan uses are both consistent with the commercial center designation and permit sensitive treatment of the site constraints and limitations while furthering the goals of the Cary Community Plan. I want to close by saying that we were provided a petition from staff this afternoon. We have had a chance to look at it, but not very closely. The petition voiced opposition to the proposed rezoning. There was a neighborhood meeting held here at the town. We listened to what the property owners had to say, and we took into account the concerns that were raised by those attending the meeting. And as we continued working on the proposed rezoning, we tried to incorporate them into the plan design. We are happy to meet with the folks that signed the petition to better understand their concerns. At this point, we do not know where they live. It will be helpful to know this in order to specifically address their concerns. The concern of an adjacent property owner would probably be different than someone who lives potentially a mile or two away. We are at the public hearing stage of the process. Once we hear from the residents and council members, we will continue to work on developing a plan that is both an asset to the community and the town of Cary. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and once the public hearing is closed, if you have any questions, there are other members of the team that will answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Top. Now it's time for the public hearing, 18 RZ 30 Twila Road North PDD, and I would invite our first speaker forward.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Tucker McKenzie. I'm with Withers Ravenel, civil engineer for the project, working with the applicant. Passed out some pictures of the site. The staff did a good job highlighting the elevation differences on the properties. But it's picture's worth 1,000 words. So we passed these out. The first picture you see is from the existing Twila Road, looking northwards towards the roundabout. So that fill slope you see is the slope where the roundabout would be located. As you can tell, it's built significantly above the existing grade in order to get over 540 and align with the bridge that was built with 540. So the average fall on the site is 63 feet across from south to north, falling south, as staff mentioned. But there's also significant elevation difference east to west. There's a 23-foot elevation difference east to west on the property. It kind of prohibits this site being fully commercial in nature because a commercial center wants to develop in a flat, relatively flat area, so 2%, 3% in that area. The fall across there at 60 feet over the distance is about 10%, which is fairly significant. Again, I highly encourage if anyone wants to go and look at the site itself. It's even these pictures don't do it fully justice when you go out there and look at it, as you can tell throughout the pictures. So in addition to the elevation changes on the site, there's also natural features, a stream on the east and a stream on the west. Excuse me. Staff pointed that out, but I wanted to also highlight the fact that those buffers are 100-foot buffers that kind of, again, constrict the site as far as usable area on the site. The site total usable area is around 55 to 60% of usable land area outside of stream buffers and easements. That doesn't include, doesn't take into account steepness of the site. That's just usable area. I've got some notes I'm trying to run through and keep it short. So in addition to the topo constraints, commercial center really does well with visibility. And so as the site falls away, in order to not build 60-foot high retaining walls, you need to naturally fall away with it. And also, it's cost prohibitive to bring in all that fill and retaining walls. So the commercial center is going to, in this area, would want to be below Morrisville Parkway, significantly below, in an average of 15 feet or so, being below Morrisville Parkway. So which, again, if you think about building height around 20 to 28 feet, makes it prohibitive from a sightline distance to see. So with the hotel designation as in the commercial center, that being the hub, we think that that use, along with associated, whether it's restaurants, small shop restaurants and things of that nature, kind of blend well together, where it's not driven solely by visibility, but uses for the community, in addition to the shared uses with the hotel. The final point I'd like to make is on the connectivity, or the access to the site. So there's 3 access points to the site. The roundabout has a full access, and there's a connection that is proposed to be made to Stockwell Lane. For a site this large, 36 acres, and having 2 access points, one real full movement access point, again, makes it prohibitive from a commercial standpoint to allow people to get in and out on a regular basis. So we think that the use we've put together, combined with the access points, the pedestrian trails, and taking into account the natural environment around it, is kind of the best use for the land. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Next speaker.
Good evening again. Travis Fluitt, Transportation Engineer with Kimley Horn, here on behalf of the applicant. Just want to hit a couple of the transportation-related items. As staff mentioned, we are committing to do, and as I referenced earlier, the divide and conquer approach to the intersection of 55 and Morrisville Parkway. The applicant is committing to install the second eastbound left turn lane on Morrisville Parkway on NC 55. This is a significant improvement. It's the most beneficial improvement to this intersection in terms of level of service and queuing. Another significant item that I don't think was mentioned was, in coordination with staff, we have secured the 4th leg to the roundabout, that access from NCDOT. That is a critical connection to make commercial viable on this site. Without it, commercial would be very difficult to attract users. And it also, we expect most of the traffic to come in and out of that connection, which will take traffic off, or traffic won't have to use the connection on Stockwell and over to Highcroft, so it won't have to mix with some of the residential traffic to the east and help those people. There have been concerns expressed by residents, neighbors about traffic. If this site were developed entirely as commercial, you could get 50% more to double the number of PM peak hour trips on the site versus what is proposed with the current rezoning. So if they're concerned about traffic with this plan, it would be even worse if it were entirely commercial. And that is a critical point because NCDOT was reluctant to give us that access as it was. Staff was very helpful in that regard. The town's support was critical to get that access. But if we were to double the amount of traffic coming in and out of that access, I don't think DOT would have been supportive of it because of the delays that it would have added to that interchange ramp. I'd be happy to answer any questions you'll have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. First of all, I would like to, my name is Shirish. I am one of the residents in the Friarsgate neighborhood, which is right adjacent to where this development is coming. So first of all, I would like to thank you guys. I think Mr. Mayor responded to our email earlier this afternoon. Thanks for your prompt reply. And I guess you are in the favor of our petition, hopefully. I think we have outlined what we believe. about why we don't agree with this development in quite detail. So I humbly, request all of you to please read that petition if you have not. And if you believe that there are some amateur mistakes that we have made, tell us so we can correct some rewordings there. Because we truly believe that this is not beneficial to where we are right now and what it's going to cause. We believe that this does not comply with the Town of Cary rezoning requirements. We have outlined them in that, so I'm not going to just read them, but we're just trying to make a point that you please take a look at that and hopefully, rule in our favor by not approving this. If you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. Like this. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Eric Bell, and I'm here mostly to tell you about the company that's made the application tonight. Goldberg Companies, or GCI Acquisitions, is a family-owned real estate business. We've been in business for about 65 years now, and I'm part of the third generation of ownership and management of the company. All of what we do is funded with private equity, our family. We don't seek outside investment. We don't get institutional investment. And while our business is primarily multifamily, and we've been building in the Carolinas for the last 15 years, we're a little bit different than most of the apartment developers that come before you. We are long-term owners. We are not the merchant builders that are primarily building in the Carolinas today. What that means is that rather than building it, filling it, and selling it, we're building it for our own portfolio. We're holding it typically generationally. I think the average right now in the country is a 5-year hold by multifamily real estate companies, and we are well in excess of that, probably 15 to 20 years as an average. That's important for a couple reasons. The most important one I want to talk about right now is during the construction process, if you're a merchant builder, and it's a very viable business and there are a lot of quality developers, in the end they have to watch what they spend. And they might decide not to spend money on something that they know will be a maintenance problem in 2 or 3 years, but it won't be their problem, because it's going to be something they sell and the new owner is going to have to handle that. For us, we spend the money up front because it's going to be our maintenance problem. The other thing that I think is important for you to know is that me being in front of you tonight, I could give you my business card, give you my cell phone number. In 3 years or 5 years or 15 years, you'll be able to call me if there's any issue or concern that you have with our development. There's been a lot of talk about how much of this should be commercial and how much should be residential. And I understand the dilemma that you all have to face, and as we go through the process, we'll be working to help you with that. What makes this site bad for commercial, all the things that were just outlined for you, are what make it great for a multifamily project. The changes in topography, the ability to protect the stream buffers on either side, the ability to preserve the trees and the screening between the residential neighborhoods and our development. All of those things make an apartment community beautiful. And that's so much of why we were excited by this opportunity. As people have mentioned, we've increased the amount of commercial that we're having out on the road where it belongs. It doesn't belong down the hill. No retailer would ever come. No commercial site would ever want to be developed there. And I understand others have tried and walked away from this because it just doesn't lend itself to a commercial development. It would be a wonderful mix of uses if we could have commercial and hotel up front and then our apartment community down the hill along the stream buffers. I'll be here with the rest of our group to answer any questions that come up. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, council members. My name is Olu Ogunaike, and I'm one of the residents in the area. First of all, I just want to thank you guys. This is my first time doing this type of event, and I do think it's a testament to the democratic process. And it is really impressive for members of the community to have a voice, in the decision-making process. So I just want to tell you guys thank you. I recently moved to North Carolina about 3 years ago from Florida. My wife is a professor at UNC. And I'm still trying to sell on the area because I work as a consultant, I travel a lot, and I get to go around North Carolina. One of the things that when I was moving to North Carolina, because I didn't know anything about Raleigh, my coworkers specifically said, if you're looking for a place, choose Cary. I didn't know I lived in Florida, Tampa. So I looked up apartments, a townhome back then, on the internet, and they basically just did a video walkthrough of the community and said, hey, town owner, go around, just show me the area. And I fell in love with it. And from there, signed the lease, not even knowing what the area looked like, believed what I saw. And from the moment I moved into the area, I was really impressed with what Cary is all about. And if you go around looking through the top places to live, Cary is consistently showing up alongside Morrisville. And ever since I moved into the area, I can tell you, when I fly out for work, there's always that peace when I come back home, because there's something about this area, and it's a testament to what you as the custodians, do, where you protect it. And I've heard, from sitting there, how people talk about the Greenway. I try to run, I don't do a good job at it, but every time I go out, you can see how the area seems to be very protected, and people seem to be very passionate about the culture and how that environment looks. So I live in a place adjacent to where everything is about to happen. And when I got the letter in the mail about all the activities that's about to take place, I'm naturally not against development. I think it's needed. And the last time we came here in January, I did talk to the gentleman. I said it's inevitable that development must happen because it's part of what makes our economy grow. But we have to do it in the right way. We have to do it in a way that we don't bastardize the community. Just sitting back there, I'm a father of three, just listening into hotels, gas station. In some cases, they showed Lowe's and 400 units of apartment communities. If any one of you have driven to that area, if you just see all the current homes that exist there, now imagine 400 units of community of apartment coming in. Imagine a gas station coming in. Imagine a hotel. There's Highcroft Elementary School, which is a walking distance from my home. It's a very good school. Imagine a hotel being a walking distance from Highcroft Elementary and what that is going to do to it. Imagine 400 units of apartment complexes coming into that environment and what that does to all of the properties, that currently exist in that area. There's a place where in the evenings, if you go running, you see cyclists coming down from 55 or further down from Davis. They enjoy going down that path, and it's just a beauty to behold. So I'm not against development, because I think it's needed, but I want us to be very thoughtful about it. And I don't believe what is being proposed right now to rezone it is a thoughtful way of developing that place. I do believe, as a concerned citizen, that proposal is going to bastardize that environment, is going to depress the properties in that area. And if you look down 5 years from now, that entire area will look completely different with the amount of development that is being pushed down into that area. And not only will people start living, it also continues to depress. Think about, I know there's going to be property taxes or taxes that will be generated from it, but when people start living, it just causes something against what you guys have protected for years in what Cary should be. So this is me as a concerned citizen, concerned father, with my kids constantly cycling around, riding, and I just worry, and it's giving me, I kid you not, nightmares, because I just worry about what is about to happen to that area. And I just want to say I'm not against development. I just want it to be very thoughtful. I want it to be very right, and I want it to be in a way that will protect the environment and also help us develop as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. Well, good evening. My name is Debbie Gilbert Stitt, and I am one of the original 18 Twyla Road homeowners. Twyla Road came into being in the late 70s, and the last home was completed in 1987. All of the Twyla Road homeowners came there for one reason. It was an opportunity to own our own little piece of heaven. Home sites were between 2 and 5 acres, and we could enjoy the wonders of country living. Most of us thought we were building our forever homes on Twyla Road. At that time, it was not a convenient place to live, as the nearest grocery stores were the Winn-Dixie at Highway 55 and 54, or the Food Line down in Apex. Highway 55 was a 2-lane road into Durham and Apex, and the only thing towards Apex was OT's Barbecue and the Chevy dealership at 64. The nearest elementary school was A.B. Balcom down in Apex, and our designated high school was Apex High. Twyla Road was a dirt and gravel road that was maintained by Staley Hilliard and his beloved tractor. We were surrounded by farmland. There were no streets anywhere, and at nighttime you could see every star that God had made. It was like having a planetarium in your backyard. Our community, small community of 18 families, would gather for potlucks, swim parties, go sledding down Twyla Road, and in general, keep an eye out for each other. Our children were privileged enough to have wide open spaces to ride mini bikes, four-wheelers, and go-karts, something you can only do in the country. For us working adults, it was nice to come home to our simple life. At some point in the mid-90s, one of the neighbors found that the state was offering a program of matching funds for street pavement, and collectively again, each homeowner contributed their fair share of matching funds, and Twyla Road was paved. And in doing so, it was the first time that school buses came down our road. It wasn't long before expansion started, and the countryside along 55 was dotted with a high school, shopping centers, and residential neighborhoods. Folks were discovering what we already knew, and that was that this was a great place to live. For a while, Twyla Road remained a well-kept secret, and our country living was still safe and intact, but soon our world would forever change. Highcroft was built, a cemetery came, a church was built at the top of Twyla Road, and expansion was all around us. We then received news that they were ready to begin building the 540 corridor, for which there were 3 proposed routes, and once again, collectively, we sought to save Twyla Road, but we were unsuccessful. And soon the sound of motor graders, dump trucks, and heavy equipment replaced our silent, tranquil surroundings. The heavy construction equipment left, but we are now left with the continuous roar of trucks and cars whizzing down 540. Trees were cut, ponds were breached, and our beloved Twyla Road was disappearing right before our eyes. The very reason we had all moved there initially existed no more. We realized that our community was coming to an end, and once again we mobilized. And in 2011, we requested that Cary grant us the right to amend our land use plan to mixed use, which was approved. We then collectively proceeded to market Twyla Road to developers, which, due to the fact that there were so many unknowns at that time, became a very slow and arduous process. Eventually, we signed 2 contracts with well-known developers in Wake County, the first being John Kane and subsequently Casto. After doing their due diligence, each of them determined that with stream buffers, the wetlands, the setbacks, limited access, and the topography of Twyla Road, a large commercial center was simply not feasible. Meanwhile, during this 6-year period, Brider's Gate was developed, for which some of us, that was in our backyard, like mine, and Green Hope Crossing was developed at the top of Twyla Road and Green Hope School Road. We were then fortunate enough to be approached by GCI, also a commercial developer. They said they could work with the environmental constraints of stream buffers and wetlands and the topography. While their primary product is multifamily homes, there is also a commercial piece in their site plan. They will build walking trails, provide green space, build a playground, and provide housing for those who don't want home ownership and yet wish to enjoy all the amenities that a community has to offer. Unlike many developers who build a project
I'm so
and then
sorry,
disappear.
but I have to interrupt you. Your time has expired. but we would like to see or hear your comments. If you could leave them with the clerk or send them to her later, she'll make sure we get a copy of them.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you for your time.
I'm dying to hear the rest of the story.
I'd like to hear the rest of it. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Mayor, council members, my name is Destry Jones. I live at 1140 Twyla Road. I'd like to thank the board for allowing me the time to speak about my personal experience regarding this land development proposal and the zoning request. I'd like to preference my comments by saying that my wife Kathy, who's in the audience, and I understand change and progress has to happen. Okay? We bought our property in 1994. We weren't one of the originals, but we were really excited to have a home in a quiet little valley that would allow us to ride our horses out of our barn onto the trails we could ride on for hours. This was the ultimate goal for us when purchasing our home and property. As we rode our horses, exploring the trails and lands surrounding our neighborhood, including many of our neighbors' property, we found many interesting variations to land topography surrounding us. We were surprised to discover the numerous ponds, high ridges, deep valleys with beautiful continuously flowing streams. As large developments moved our way, we lost more and more of our trails where we could ride. When 540 opened, our pleasure riding out of our barn down our driveway abruptly ended. We were now feeling the impact and progress of change that had caught up to us. We needed to do something that would allow us to continue this quiet country lifestyle we had enjoyed. Then we found out Morris Parkway was going to cut through the heart of our community with, as you know, an interchange, which is a good thing, as it will allow the surrounding neighborhoods and businesses access to 540. That is where our plan, along with many of our neighbors, started to form around finding a developer that would purchase our land. The objective of this would be twofold. It would allow us to find new property in the country, similar qualities to Twyla, and two, allow for the land to better serve the surrounding neighborhood developments, businesses, and Carystown growth plan. We had two developers that had visions to put a large grocery store as an anchor along with additional retail space, and as you already heard, both those contracts failed because the developer told us the topography constraints of the land would not support that type of commercial development. Then GCI came along, being a family-owned business that makes a long-term commitment to their development. They have established and to the communities that surround them, not just throwing up cheaply built construction, instead ensuring their developments enhance the surrounding neighborhoods. Their vision and plan for a combination of multifamily housing along with commercial sites looks to be better suited for the topography they are working with and a good fit for the surrounding communities. So along with the rest of my neighbors at Twyla Road, I'd like to ask the board to grant us this zoning request. I know it's not this evening, but in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello. My name is Beth Kearns, and I'm speaking today in support of the rezoning request. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council. Our family bought land and built our forever home on Twyla Road 32 years ago. We first learned of the Morrisville Parkway Extension, the 540 Toll Road project approximately 20 years ago. It's a long time. But it wasn't until the path of the Morrisville Parkway was chosen by the town of Cary roughly 10 years ago that the lives of those living on Twyla Road would be changed forever. The path of the parkway directly split through the heart of the Twyla Road community. We've watched as 6 houses of our friends and neighbors have been demolished in a matter of days, and our street has been cut off from the existing entrance to Twyla Road. Some of us who were fortunate enough to not have our houses taken by the town of Cary instead had land condemned. What was once a beautiful wood-lined street is now riddled with clear-cut land used for right-of-way, as well as drainage and power easements, leaving houses now exposed, resulting in major negative effects to the aesthetics and value of our homes. Most of those left on Twila Road are in our 60s and 70s. Unfortunately, we have seen some of our friends and neighbors pass away waiting on the forever moving Marshall Parkway project timeline to be set, giving us a chance to move on with our lives. While many people at this age are excited about home remodeling and landscaping projects, those on Twila Road live in a break-fix world. We are daily limping along, failing heat pumps, patching leaky roofs, and covering cracks in our walls that the blasting during the building of the 540 toll road caused, while spending only the necessary money required to live there while we wait. Believe me when I tell you that no one wants to be the leftover houses that sit at the base of a 35-foot tall Town of Cary Road project. We have regular power and internet outages due to the compromised root systems of trees adjacent to the cleared land, and live on a street that is now lined with muddy water-filled basins and waist-high grass. We are lucky if we get mail delivered 3 days a week, and since the northern end of Twila Road is now buried behind dozens of traffic barrels and road closure signs, getting a package delivered from UPS, FedEx, or Amazon is next to impossible. There are no GPS maps existing that could currently direct anyone to our remaining houses. Twila Road, as part of the Marshall Parkway Road project, is now designed as the path for the water runoff from the 540 toll road to the west. To the east, all of the water runoff from the Friars Gate community is directed under Marshall Parkway, flooding the back of all of the Twila Road tracts of land. I invite any of you to visit during a hard rain. It is certainly a sight to behold. 8 years ago, this very same town council, some of you are here during that time, voted in approval to amend the land use of the property on Twila Road to a mixed-use designation. You have also since then supported this area being mixed use on the Cary Long Range Plan, so rezoning of this property should be right in line with the 8-year journey to get here. The damage has already been caused due to the devastating blow that the Twila Road community took from the Cary Road project, and what remains is nothing for the town of Cary to be proud of, but there is zero that can be done about that now. What you can do, though, is approve the rezoning application for this tract of land and finally lift the chokehold this project has had on our lives for over 20 years. Turn the property over to GCI, who's an amazing developer and will be an even better neighbor in the community. Let them do what they do best, and that is bring their vision for this land to life so they can transform this current black eye on Twila Road into a development that Cary can truly say they're proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. I'm J.W. Sharon. I've been a land planner and broker on this property for the last 9 years. 9 hard years. It's one of the sites that you would think would be ideal when you look from a bird's eye view. When you look from your plans, you say, wow, 540, Marshall Parkway, what a spot. But it's only when you get into it, as I told you earlier tonight, that it becomes difficult. I was here to ask for you all to change the land use plan. You did. You gave them opportunity, gave them hope. Then I was asked to market it. I went to over 75 different national and local developers. No one could make it work. It's impossible with not only the grade changes, the topo and everything else, but if you look on your map, one of the things that's overlooked is the black dots and the gray lines you see there. That is controlled access highway. It's like when you come off of a ramp and you have fencing, but that fencing continues all the way down Marshall Parkway. You just can't cut through that. DOT won't allow it. Roundabouts, gosh, we love them. Commercial developers hate them. They do not like roundabouts on thoroughfares. They can take them in the project, but not when that's their sole point of access. It's very restrictive. They're not familiar with them. They just don't understand it. Previous developers approached 8 different grocery store chains. None would take the site, independently or as a retail shopping center site. I do believe that, all the concerns of the residents are well respected. They've asked me to create a miracle from this site. It's not about money now. It's about letting them move on, getting their lives together. We have a good developer here. If it's not this one, who is it going to be, and how much time will it take? We've gone through a strong market, and this is a very, very respected developer. He will bring you quality. He is not going to build to flip. He will build with Carey's quality of expectations. We think it's a perfect fit. We'd love for you to help these residents move on, and I am available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharon. Other speakers for this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing before I open it up to council members for their questions or comments. I do want to invite those that signed the petition to contact the applicants, because the applicants have been working on this for a very long time. And as they said, they have a developer that has a good reputation. So I think there's common ground there. And it's at least worth the effort to work together to see if we can find common ground. I would hate to have to make a decision with both parties not agreeing on anything. And I think that's not the case. I think there's common ground to be made with those on the petition and with the applicant. And I would like to see that before it comes back to us. And having said that, I'll turn to my colleagues and open it up.
I have 2 questions. This is the first time I've seen a roundabout so close to a major interchange. Is the long-term plan to always have a roundabout right there?
I believe the long-term plan is to transition to a traffic signal at some point.
Okay. And do you happen to know what triggers that?
I'd like to see if a representative from transportation will be able to speak to that. They'd be able to address that a little bit better. Thank you.
So good evening. When the interchange project was first envisioned, we knew we wanted to do something at the ramps that was innovative. And our first glance, anytime we do an intersection, is try to look at roundabouts first and then look at a signal second. The roundabout came about that we could use a roundabout for about 12 to 15 years. It would be able to handle the traffic fairly easily. And traffic could flow through that area very, very well. Whenever this gets widened to a dual lane bridge in each direction, then it's probably going to have to be converted to a traffic signal. But there are a lot of innovative interchanges across the United States that are using alternative treatments like this, and we believe this is going to be a great asset for Cary coming off Morsel Parkway.
Great, thanks. And one other, do you?
I have a follow-up question about that, if that's
Yeah,
okay
go
with you.
ahead.
So, Jerry, I can't remember if you were on this trip or not, but we did an intercity trip to Carmel, Indiana to look
I'm
at.
sorry, they wouldn't let me go then.
Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. Okay.
Roundabout capital of the world.
Yeah, I don't know which of you guys were on it. Okay, so we saw at the top of an interchange, we saw the circles being used there, and they were actually accommodating 2 lanes in each direction. So it was being used. If we found out that this was successful here, and then we widen the road, is there space to be able to expand out that circle to be able to accommodate that?
And
Is it
make it
being
a dual
reserved?
lane roundabout?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there certainly is.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we have that room saved aside.
Yeah.
And this would be the time to do it, because we have seen it successful in other places in the country.
You know, there's many elements of even though it has what we call a single lane to go around it, there's also extra lanes for making right-hand turns
Okay.
for multiple lanes. So obviously, when they bought control of access for the corridor, we bought enough right-of-way for ultimate condition too.
Got it. Okay, all right, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, Lori, but I just wanted to
No,
ask that
it's,
question.
my second question is also about roads. On one of the pictures, it's kind of like a strange, I think it was the slide where it showed the various properties being addressed. And it looked like Twyla Road was not included in the PDD major. It looked like it wasn't part of the actual zoning, the way the yellow lines were. It looked like the actual road was outside of that. No, there's another one. Go back another one. Not that one.
You got a page?
Where it has yellow outline.
beginning. Give it a number.
Yeah, that one. Can you explain why the road isn't part of that? Normally, we actually see the lines abutting, right, the properties? Is it not?
I think with this, what you see here is the yellow is outlining the property boundaries. And of course, the property boundaries, end where the current right-of-way for where Twyla Road is located, so that's why you see that line. But I believe when what the developer's planning to do would be potentially to reconfigure that. And so that could mean abandoning some of that right-of-way. And so then that dividing line would shift and they would reform, roads within their development.
So would this be a regular road with curb and gutter? Because it doesn't have curb and gutter today.
Yeah, when they develop, they'll have to meet our standards, which is curb and gutter.
Okay, just as a heads up, the developer said, no, they're not doing curb and gutter, they're doing swales, so, swales.
It'll be great going through site plan approval.
Yeah, right, good luck with it.
I just want to make sure that is all figured out, because we did away with the
Right.
swales from our conservation plan.
About 2-3 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, everything out west now is being built with curb and gutter and sidewalks, streetlights, you name it.
Okay.
Good.
I just wanted to make sure, because
Okay.
Well intentioned.
what I heard.
Yeah, it's a really great idea that did not work. Yeah.
And we don't want
Oh,
to relive it.
And the developer is standing over there with his finger up.
So just to address, we're definitely going to consider putting the curb and gutter. What the comment made and we're talking about is what's viable inside of a stream buffer, what's allowable, what's permittable. And so we're going to consider all means and methods necessary to bring it up to town standards. And really just as we go through the site plan, figure out what we can and can't do through the core property and what that means to the site plan process. But we do want to do our best to meet the town standards as far as that goes.
I think when they asked those questions was to do their best is because the current Twyla Road runs through the middle of the stream buffer.
Exactly,
So
that's
if
why
it's
I
in the middle,
asked.
so if it's in the middle of the stream buffer and the state won't permit disturbing the stream buffer, then how can it be permitted? So that's the real, and there's a tricky thing here.
So for me, that would be a make or break for me, because we've gotten away from swales. so-
Good evening, council. Actually, we regulate the stream buffer. That existing road bed is a mitigating circumstance. So widening it is allowable with mitigation.
Okay.
So the cost to build a road is certainly going to be an opportunity there. What we can't speak to is the Army Corps of Engineers may require additional mitigation to move the channel in order to accommodate the road widening.
Okay, thank you.
So, yep.
It's a really complex site. I mean, it's really amazing. It's interesting because I have not seen the petition, so my caveat is saying I have not seen the petition yet from the residents, but this site, we've been putting a lot of thought into this site for a long time. As was mentioned by the speakers, it was over 8 years ago that we approved the mixed-use designation for it, and we have reaffirmed that with our Cary Community Plan. All along, we were expecting pretty intense development here because we thought at an interchange and place where a major east-west road in our region that spans several municipalities, at that intersection, that's the appropriate place for an intense use. So in my opinion, this is an appropriate use for the land. It is actually not as intense as I thought it would be, and now we understand why, because of all the constraints on the property. But I just want to say to the homeowners who are adjacent, I'm happy to meet with you and hear what your concerns are. I think there's always opportunities for the applicants to listen to what you have to say as far as concerns go and try to address some of those concerns. The devil's in the details, and it's much better to get a more intense use that's done really, really well with high quality than it is to get a lower use that's kind of like, meh. So I think that this is probably going in the right direction, and I just encourage the residents to reach out to me, as your district representative, and to reach out to the applicants who are clearly willing to work together, as the mayor said. So I think this is probably in the right direction.
Other comments?
I was going to say what Ms. Robinson said, but I'm glad she said it. No, I mean, I just echo. We talked about this 8-9 years ago and had a vision, and I think they found a developer that's trying to help us realize that vision and help the folks on Twyla Road. I too would love to hear the end of Ms. Debbie's. I'm sorry I didn't get the last name again. I should have remembered it, but I'd love to hear the end of that story.
Yeah, me too.
And I think those folks have suffered a lot and been good neighbors and very accepting, and they understand change, and I appreciate them, their efforts to not just take the money and run, to find a quality developer, somebody who's going to do the right thing for the area and do right by the community. So just good people, and it's a shame their lives have changed so much, and hopefully they can find another piece of heaven and see the stars again and ride their horses.
Other comments?
I would, I want to echo the comments about working with the applicant. You know, when I get an email, and I truly do respect the concern that other residents have, but when I get an email that says, you know, 200 of us look at our petition, and it's kind of a form petition, you know, you can't tell what names are real, what aren't, and then I see a large percentage of them, or a percentage of them, I don't want to say large, that are from different states and different areas. You know, does that mean that they've moved here? You know, I don't know. In other words, be factual in what you share with us so that we can address your concerns with the applicant. I found that to just be personally, I just found that to be a puzzling document when you're trying to gain our support to help you with your concerns. So, you know, maybe I'm a different generation, but if you're going to send me something automated, I want to trust the document that what's in it is real. So I'll just share that as an observation.
Other comments? This will go to the Planning and Zoning Board. They're an advisory board of citizens that review a proposal and see if it matches the Cary Community Plan, and they provide additional comments to us to help us understand a citizen's point of view about the proposal. And so that will take place in a month or two. We're going to see it probably in the fall for a decision, is my guess, somewhere around in there. Am I right, Ms. Stry?
Sounds correct.
Okay. So that's where this, and if you have any questions along the way, especially detailed questions, Ms. Stry is your lady. She can answer all those questions. Of course, you can always contact us. You can always speak at every meeting. You can always contact us through email, or any of the staff members will be glad to help in any way we can. All right, we'll move to our last public hearing. It's the fourth one, and it's on the PRCR Master Plan Addendum and Amendment to the Cary Community Plan. Facilities Planner Sandy Bailey will present this item, and council may take action.
Good evening, council. This staff report is presented to you tonight for your consideration of an addendum to the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan to include the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Area and to amend the Cary Community Plan to incorporate this addendum by reference. In 2012, the town and Chatham County adopted the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan, addressing Cary's western edge. The plan did not include parks and greenways planning, but listed it as a future implementation item. The current Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan was also adopted in 2012 and did not include planning for the joint land use area, as you can see here. This proposed addendum includes a master plan for parks and greenways for the study area shown here in gold and fulfills the implementation item listed in the joint land use plan. Staff has coordinated with Chatham County staff throughout this planning process, including them in the consultant selection process, inviting their participation in all public meetings, and working with them to present draft plans to their Recreation Advisory Committee. It is important to note that development is already occurring within the study area. Adoption of a master plan addendum for the study area will ensure that space for future recreation infrastructure grows with the community in a cohesive way, gives property owners and developers notice of where parks and greenways are desirable, and puts the town in the strongest position to ensure parkland and greenway dedication occur where we want them. The 2012 Parks Master Plan established level of service standards, and those same standards were reviewed and applied in concert with public input when planning for this study area. The resulting recommendations for the study area outlined here in blue include a potential future park. Should a future park be pursued, the recommendation is that it be centrally located within the study area in the vicinity indicated on the map, and that it be served by greenways. A greenways network was also developed, as you can see by the green dashed lines within the study area. Greenway system plans were guided by desires to connect to the American Tobacco Trail as a primary north-south route, to include extensions toward Jordan Lake, to provide connections to existing parks and a potential future park, and to provide loop trails. The conservation land associated with Jordan Lake, which you can see in light green around the lake, reaches up to the edges of the study area and is connected by stream corridors to 2 existing park sites along the edge of the study area and the American Tobacco Trail. This draft master plan addendum includes a recommendation to expand these key corridors wherever possible to enhance ecological benefits and wildlife movement between these larger open space areas. And you can see these 2 corridors as the wider green gold shaded lines within the study area. This additional open space would not be regulatory, but is intended as a point of consideration as development occurs. This concludes staff presentation, and staff will be available to answer questions following the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Now's the time for the public hearing for the PRCR Master Plan Addendum and Amendment to the Cary Community Plan. And I would invite a first speaker forward.
You know I'm not good at this, so just please look at the handout. I am Gladys Logan. You've seen me before. You're tired of seeing me. My mother's property is off on Bachelor Road. It's the 50-acre site that this Lake Crabtree to Jordan Lake Greenway goes through the property. The south end of the property. So we're requesting that Town Council not approve this 2019 Master Plan Addendum as written, and that in particular further study be conducted regarding that particular Lake Crabtree to Jordan Lake route that is currently proposed at the south end of the property. I'm nervous. For background information, I provided an Appendix A, which was, I found that in the December 3rd Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources information that went to among their board materials. And among that, you can see, Appendix A, you can see that Jordan Lake, Lake Crabtree Greenway, went along Pine Rail Lane. I've marked that on Appendix A in red, and then it proceeded in a western direction. Now, the beauty of that was that it's very close to the trailhead on White Oak Church Road. It was also close to the potential park that's along White Oak Church Road. And so then I found, and I wasn't quite sure, and Sandy might be able to address that, but was this unanimously approved by Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources at their December 3rd meeting? Because then we move on to Appendix B that was dated October 4th. And that's one that I asked Sandy to please send me because I saw some conflicting information. And that one was moved to, there are 2 ponds on my mom's property, and there were 3 ponds on Mike Hunter, and maybe 4 ponds. There were ponds on Mike Hunter and Roy Mashburn's to the south, which are no more. And I was really amused because the trail meandered around these ponds, and they aren't there. So the idea might have been good, but anyway, so it puts that, Appendix B, put it as going across my mom's property. And then we move to Appendix C, which is your, what is among this, up on the overhead. And that one puts it in the same location, but after talking with Sandy, she said, well, we could move it slightly to the south. It may not impact your mom's property at all. But I went ahead and put Appendix D as Sandy's email to me that, and she's been very nice about this, but when she spoke, it was just so much uncertainty. And I know, you've got your rules that whoever goes first, kind of, one of you told me that, gets to determine alignment of roads and this, that, and the other. So, Appendix D shows the uncertainty of the situation. So factors to consider, I don't understand why that change was made and why it was not left along Pine Rail or this open space up there where it's all close to. Isn't that one of your preferences, that it come out close to the trailhead, close to parks? So this is stuck out there in the middle of a long ways from either of those. And so we would ask that you take a look at the Greenway corridor for a different location of that. We would ask, our opinion, a thoroughfare, a collector, and now a greenway are just too much to dump on one property owner. And I've put some information there to explain that, how
Ms. Batchelor, I'm sorry I have to interrupt you, but your time has expired.
Will you please read the rest of this, and I will answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
This says I have 16 seconds remaining.
All I see is a light.
I see.
Yeah, it's a
Well,
Chatham,
whatever, time remaining.
Chatham clock.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and bring Ms. Bailey back up and open up to council members for questions or comments.
Just a question for clarification. The green dots on the map, that's approximate location, correct? Those aren't locked in stone. It's not exactly going to be here. Over time, depending on how land develops, how things change in the area, other opportunities that present themselves, that greenway can go north, it can go south. We typically or historically work with landowners and such to accommodate some of the concerns that were just expressed. Is that correct?
We do. We do work with the property owners, and I've talked with Ms. Logan. We did shift that trail that's adjacent to her mom's property slightly south. There is a collector proposed in that vicinity. And what I talked with Ms. Logan about is that, so with that collector development, that section of trail would become a street side trail. Right. And we anticipate that it would be on the south side of that collector, which would put it further off of her mother's property. I think she expressed concern about where that collector would locate, but in talking with transportation staff, they've indicated that the desire is that it follow that property line as closely as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
That's helpful. Other comments, questions?
Yeah, it's just it's really interesting because the fear of the unknown is pretty big, right? And you fear this is going to adversely affect your property. And yet we've heard today a couple speakers reference how much they love the Greenway system and how it's such an amenity. People who come here and say, hello, I love this aspect of my community. So it could actually be a selling feature of the community, of the land. You know, Ms. Logan, should you choose to sell it at some point, I don't think it would get developed, you know, while she's still occupying the site. So it could be a real asset having that connector going through, that Greenway connector going through the land.
Well, the reality is it's not going to develop until her mother or her family or somebody sells the property, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're not going to go and stick the road
Nope.
through there, right? There's no intent to do that, so.
Hey, it's pretty exciting when we were on the joint Chatham, Kerry
Yeah.
Chatham task force. We were talking about this, and that was, what, 2012, I guess? So to see this finally come to fruition and have the partnership with Chatham County is really great. So thank you for all that work. Sure.
But I will read this, Ms. Logan. And
Other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Is there a motion?
I think we're forwarding.
Is this not going to P and Z?
It's not going to be.
I think it is. Right now.
I'm sorry?
Being referred to P and Z?
Yes.
Oh,
No motion.
Okay.
that's not what I have.
Like, what? Do we have to vote on it now? I can't read this fast enough.
I'm just reading.
Yeah. Like you said earlier, it's the first.
Okay. Wow. So this is going to Planning and Zoning Board?
Yes.
So this decision is
Very.
months away. Okay, very good.
You have time
Sorry.
to read your document.
I was reading this document. Thank you, Ms. Bailey.
Thank you.
We now move to discussion items. Our first discussion item is the 2019 bond referendum preliminary findings resolution. And our town manager, Sean Stiegel, will introduce the item and council may take action.
Just have 10 pages here to read through, if you could bear with me. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to provide a brief introduction to Karen's presentation because her item is incredibly important to what Cary will or will not become over the next 5 to 7 years. As council and many staff will recall from our May 9th quarterly meeting, we did a lot of amazing work together, especially around two challenging questions. First, how will we prioritize and pay for preserving, maintaining, and upgrading our aging infrastructure and disappearing green space? And second, how will we prioritize and pay for the necessary additions to our existing inventory as the community's needs and desires change over time? Or more simply put, how will we continue to keep Cary great? During the meeting, we talked in depth about our streets and sidewalks, our parks and greenways, and our community centers and numerous other buildings that are essential to maintaining Cary's high quality of life. One by one, we went through every idea, question, and concern. At the end of the day, Council, you asked staff to begin the formal legal process for an October bond referendum, and that brings us to tonight and Karen's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello again, Council. Tonight is a significant first step in the legal process that leads us to that referendum on October 8th. As you can see from the key dates listed here, we'll be back again on June 27th and July 18th in preparation to hear from our citizens about creating an option to finance some of our most important new capital projects and maintenance of our capital assets. The capital needs that led us to this point were prioritized based on a number of factors, such as the Imagine Cary Community Plan and partnerships that leverage our investments. These factors can change over time. For example, an unforeseen opportunity could arise, or we might need to change and adjust to economic conditions. Once we choose to move a project forward, the path to project completion varies. For example, an investment in land can create opportunities that lead to preliminary design. Some projects begin with community outreach. Ultimately, as we manage technical tasks, such as permitting and bidding, we ultimately get to construction of projects that keep Cary great. Throughout this process, Council plays an active role through project authorization, prioritization, gathering citizen input through public hearings, and other various approvals, depending on the project type. A fundamental Council role includes the financial appropriations. Speaking of the financial details, let's get back to the business at hand, taking a legal step to launch the referendum. Before you tonight is a resolution known as the Preliminary Findings Resolution. It spells out the type and the maximum amount of debt which would be $113 million for transportation projects and $112 million for parks projects. It documents that Cary follows state laws in not only our debt management, but in our budgetary and fiscal management as well. Finally, this resolution directs staff to take necessary administrative steps to seek state approval and to advertise our intentions. To keep us moving forward, staff recommends that council approve the preliminary findings resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. Questions for Ms. Mills? Comments or motion?
Make a motion that we move forward with the next step of the bond referendum,
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
unless it has to be some legalese. No, that's good.
It might be nice if you'd mention approved resolution.
I don't know, I was so excited, I didn't look at, approve the resolution, let's see, where is it? The 2019 bond referendum findings resolution.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Mills, to
Thank
you
you.
and your team for getting us this far. I know we're just starting, but there's been a lot of work to get us to this point, so
Has
thank you
been.
very much.
It's going to be fun. Thanks.
We now move to our second discussion item. It is 18 RZ 12, Cary Point PDD rezoning. Senior Planner Anna Redling will give us a report. We're going to hear from the Planning and Zoning Board about their recommendation, and we may take action this evening. Ms. Redling.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Before you this evening is a request to create a new planned development district, the Cary Point PDD, at the corner of Morrisville Parkway and NC Highway 55. The subject property is highlighted in yellow. The site appears to be substantially impacted by stream buffers. These will be verified at the time of site plan review. This is a closer view of the site. Surrounding uses are Soil and Mulch, Blakely Subdivision, Sedgefield, Oaks at Highcroft, some self-storage, the Army Reserve Center, and a proposed preschool that the site plan is under review right now. With this rezoning, the first action proposed by the applicant is to remove 1.16 acres, of which most is stream buffer, from Tract 5 of the Highcroft Village PDD. The land would be removed from the portion of Tract 5 that is south of Morrisville Parkway and is the preschool site that is currently under review. No other changes are proposed for the Highcroft Village PDD. The applicant's second proposed action is to add the acre from Highcroft Village to the adjacent 9 acres to meet the minimum 10-acre land area requirement necessary to create the proposed Cary Point PDD. Staff's recommendation for this rezoning request is for approval, which makes this case somewhat unusual because at the time of the P&Z board meeting, staff found the case to be inconsistent with the Imagine Cary plan, and the P&Z board did as well. At that time, staff had some concerns about how well the proposed use fit the site, but the main issue was the impact on traffic congestion and future safety of the Morrisville Parkway and Highway 55 intersection. This concern was strong enough that we didn't recommend approval. Following the P&Z board meeting, the applicant worked closely with staff to better understand the issues and concerns, and then offered additional zoning conditions that staff believes have tipped the scales to plan consistency and a staff recommendation for approval. I'll review now the standards and conditions for the proposed PDD. First, a reminder that except for that portion that's being removed from the existing Highcroft PDD, which is zoned PDD major, the existing base zoning for the site is Office Research and Development, ORD. And the proposed zoning for the site is PDD minor. The applicant has submitted this proposed master plan for the Cary Point PDD. It would have 2 subdistricts. R1 would be the residential subdistrict with approximately 8 acres. C1 would be the commercial subdistrict with approximately 2 acres. The green hatched area on the southern and western perimeters represents stream buffers that will be designated as open space. The permitted uses for R1 would be a maximum of 120 age-restricted multifamily units and associated amenities and recreation. The applicant is proposing that 30% of all first-floor building area be devoted to private recreation and amenities for the residents. The maximum building height would be 55 feet. In the C1 commercial subdistrict, the permitted uses initially presented are those listed here, including shopping center, personal services, retail store, restaurant, but with no drive-through, office. Following the P&Z board meeting, the applicant removed veterinary hospitals and banks from the list of permitted uses. For the C1 subdistrict, the building floor area would be restricted to 25,000 square feet because of the traffic impact analysis, the findings of the traffic impact analysis. The maximum building height would be 42 feet. This map shows proposed perimeter and streetscape buffers. The applicant was previously proposing a 30-foot streetscape along the residential subdistrict frontage, but is now proposing an average 40-foot wide streetscape with a minimum of 30 feet. The applicant will meet the LDO's streetscape and perimeter buffer standards for the remainder of the site. The applicant is proposing a parking rate of 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit for the R1 subdistrict and has provided a written justification which is attached to your staff report. The applicant's data indicates there is reduced parking demand associated with age-restricted units. The parking rate for the commercial subdistrict will follow LDO requirements for any use that is proposed. At the Town Council public hearing on August 23rd, no citizens spoke. Since the applicant was at the time proposing a reduction in the streetscape from 50 feet to 30 feet along Morrisville Parkway, adjacent to the residential, one council member asked about other streetscape widths along Morrisville Parkway. Staff did do research and found that Friars Gate subdivision has a 30-foot streetscape on both the north and south sides, which was approved as part of the Friar PDD. Sedgefield has 50-foot streetscape. The Oaks at Highcroft has a 50-foot streetscape. And the streetscape in this location will be determined by whether the future development is non-residential or residential. And here, if the site plan for the preschool is approved, the streetscape will be 30 feet. The LDO requires the applicant to widen Morrisville Parkway along the frontage of the subject site. Following the Town Council public hearing, the applicant offered zoning conditions to construct access drives at these approximate locations, here, here, and here. These drives would be restricted to right-in, right-out movements. The applicant also offered a condition to construct on the adjacent preschool site a northbound right turn lane here that will feed into a future full movement intersection here. The applicant had previously offered a cross-access drive, between the Cary Point PDD and the preschool site, and following the Town Council meeting, they committed to connecting it to the northbound right turn lane so that Cary Point residents will have access to the full movement intersection. Some or all of the improvements illustrated here will likely be requirements of the development plan, but by offering them now as zoning conditions that tie their construction to construction phases of the development, the applicant is providing assurance that adequate and safe access to the site will be in place prior to complete build-out of the PDD. At the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, one concern of board members was that traffic impacts at the Morrisville Parkway and Highway 55 intersection weren't being addressed. Following the P&Z board meeting, the applicant offered a zoning condition to dedicate additional right-of-way sufficient to accommodate both a second left turn lane as well as a right turn lane at this intersection. In addition, the applicant has offered zoning conditions to either widen Morrisville Parkway here along the Sedgefield subdivision frontage to create a right turn lane onto Sedgefield Park Lane, or instead to widen here on the southern side of Morrisville Parkway if these improvements weren't completed as part of the preschool development before the Cary Point PDD was completed. After the staff report and PDD document were posted last week with these conditions and options, staff realized there was no need to include the widening on the south side of Morrisville Parkway as an option because it will be constructed as part of NCDOT and LDO requirements. Therefore, the applicant has now removed this widening from their zoning conditions, and they will construct the right turn lane along the Sedgefield subdivision frontage as the option chosen. Staff has reviewed the applicant's proposal against the policies and recommendations of the Imagine Cary plan and finds the following aspects are in keeping with the plan. The project will provide an additional housing option for seniors in this area of Western Cary. The housing will have some first-floor amenities and services. There will be walking trails and twice the amount of public gathering space as is required by the LDO. And there will be pedestrian connections to a small amount of office and commercial uses within the PDD. The senior apartments provide an appropriate transition from the non-residential along Highway 55 to the single-family detached housing in Highcroft. And the project adds value to a difficult-to-develop site in a prominent location. The applicant has increased the average width of the residential streetscape along Morrisville Parkway and has made some additional transportation commitments that will help mitigate the traffic impacts of the project. As mentioned earlier, at the time of the P&Z Board review, staff found this rezoning application inconsistent with policies of the Imagine Cary plan. Since the P&Z meeting, staff has reweighed all of the findings with the addition of the applicant's new zoning conditions. Staff believes the added conditions have brought the applicant's proposal into consistency with the plan and recommends approval. At the January 28th P&Z Board meeting, the Board found the request to be inconsistent with the Imagine Cary plan by a vote of 8-0, and Board Chair Mark Evangelista is here to share comments from the Board.
Thank you. And just about none of the comments apply anymore. All the move chapter problems we had have been mitigated. Sort of related was this age-restricted housing thing. There were some concerns that on a really busy intersection like this, on a place where you're not going to be in a lot of walking distance to certain amenities, that it may not be the best choice to put an age restriction on there. And I understand that sometimes age restrictions allow you to play with or manipulate the parking requirements a little more, and maybe that was a way of fitting this in. But honestly, mitigating some of these transportation issues helps with that problem that a couple of the members of the board had with the age restriction. So I think a lot of these fixes go a long way towards all the concerns we had, move chapter or not. And I would, I can't predict anything, but I think there'd be a much better or a much different result had we taken this up now as opposed to before the changes.
Questions for Mr. Evangelista? Thank you.
And this concludes the presentation, and staff's available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Redling. Questions, comments?
First, I'd like to thank Mark and the Planning and Zoning Board for their review and their work on this. I think that the applicant, after hearing their discussion and recommendation for, or finding it inconsistent, went back to the drawing board, sharpened their pencils, and went back to work. And that's direct result from the work of the Planning and Zoning Board. So we owe them a lot of thanks for that. I appreciate the traffic improvements, especially the ones that line up with Sedge Park. I think those are critical. I like the age-restricted housing. I think we need to continue to do more for our aging community. I think that's a pretty well-conditioned project, and I would tend to support it.
Other questions, comments? If not, there's wordage for a motion at your seat.
Make a motion? I move that we approve the statement of consistency as attached to this motion document for 18 REZ 12 and rezoning 18 REZ 12 Cary Point PDD with the change in condition as described by staff tonight and insert it into the PDD.
A second.
Here's a motion in 2 seconds. Discussion.
No, I also think it's a great plan. If you look at the partnership that went on with Sedgeville Park, I even drove by and saw that they had recently planted extra plants for the neighbors before this rezoning even came to us, just as an act of goodwill. So I think that also goes to show that they're doing what they can to be part of the community. And I thank them for that. And thank you, Ms. Redling, for walking us through the transportation components of this. It was very helpful.
Along with Don, I'll echo that I think that it's proving that the process works. When you go through the whole process and follow it, that the people that went, decades before us, as Jack did and others, we've got a better process perhaps, and the process works because we got a better product. It's awesome.
Very good. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you,
you.
Ms. Redling. We now move to our next discussion item, fiscal year 19 through 20 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plan Funding Recommendation. Housing and CDBG Administrator Mansa, sorry, I can't read. I'm still getting used to you. We'll present this item and council may take action. Welcome.
Thank
Is this your second presentation?
It is my second,
Second one.
yes.
You missed her first one.
I know, but I saw it. I saw that one. So.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Tonight's meeting is the final step in approving Cary's 1920 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. As mentioned at the previous council meeting, staff met with residents and local stakeholders to solicit public input. Those comments that we received included the need for more affordable housing in our community, services to assist with transitional housing, housing rehabilitation, and facilities for persons with special needs. That information, along with Cary-specific data, helped to shape the strategy and funding recommendations presented in this annual action plan. To show the town's commitment to housing and community development, we also included details not just from how we're funding CDBG projects, but also general funds and how we're showing our commitment through our own programming related to those priority areas. The largest pool of funds is housing, with the majority of those dollars focused on housing rehab. That pool is followed by economic development through activities such as the facade improvement program. Next is public facilities to help renovate structures that support nonprofits in the community. And finally, public services, which goes directly to the operations of our social service organizations. There's also a line item for the administration and the planning of that program. So focusing specifically on CDBG, this year we received 9 applications with funding requests adding up to more than $914,000. Our award this year is only $650,000, or I shouldn't say only, it's a nice amount of money, $650,000. Thankfully, we were still able to support every proposal. Through these investments, the town will be able to serve more than 20 families, keeping them in their homes. We will be able to provide housing for more than 30 Cary residents, and we will be able to serve more than 4,750 Cary residents through supportive services. Tonight, we are asking that council approve the proposed list of funded projects, that you agree to adopt the fiscal year 1920 annual action plan, and authorize staff to submit this document to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And thank you for your time, and I'm here and available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Manza. Questions for Ms. Manza?
No.
Comments or motion?
On the whole, I'm very pleased with the priorities and see how we do that. I do see that, unfortunately, in a lot of places with the aging community, I looked at the map the other day in the conference room about the number of houses built in Cary from 70 to 80. And what's happened is we have a lot of aging infrastructure, so the commitment to the rehab seems to be really good, and it's the majority of the commitment. And I guess I'd like to make sure that we continue to focus on the commitment to rehab because the house across the street from me just failed inspection and renters can't move in. So they're not meeting minimum housing standards. And this is a house built in the early 70s. So I would like to see this rehab emphasis continue like we're doing now, and I think it's a great thing we encourage. And I think we talked about leveraging more of that by working with the nonprofits that provide free labor, which is even better. So we're not having to go out with the low bidder and spend a lot of money on contractors, especially when the economy is good. It's hard to get people. Now, if the economy's bad, it's good to do a lot of bidding out to help, businesses with the economy's down. But as it is now, it's hard to get anybody to work on anything. So this volunteer labor, and with us buying materials, I think it's going to go a long way, and I appreciate the direction and the meetings that we've had concerning that.
Other questions, comments?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I found during the public hearing, I don't know if I want to call it an eye-opener, but I found it interesting about the discussion about, going with some of the larger organizations where the money is basically not put into action right away. At least that's how I interpret it, where the money's going into their bank as they look at larger plans and so forth. And, I thought there was some good feedback in a general term about looking at things that are more impactful, because we don't have that much money, $650,000. And I'd be curious about rehab as a strategy. Is that an ongoing trend in communities? To me, that's kind of a whole different outlook than what we've been doing before. I don't know if it's a higher priority or not, but when you talk about the values, and keeping the values in Cary and not having homes go in disrepair and all the other stuff, it would seem to be that should have a higher place in the future. But I don't know that for a fact. I count on you to look at best practices and look at, are we really, can we make that money more impactful? That's the question, I guess. And I just appeal, piggybacking on some of the examples that Ken gave about rehab. I just think the opportunity is there in the future for us to kind of maybe broaden that outlook before it comes to my thoughts.
Other comments, questions?
I'm
sorry.
I just want to, we heard from several citizens today who talked about what a great community we have, and there's many components that make up a great community. And one of the things that we have going for us is that we get to control our CDBG funds. Not all communities have that ability. They have it doled out kind of more in a regional manner. But several years ago, we took ownership over that, and I think it's really serving Cary well. I just want to thank our fantastic staff for the administration of those funds, and also for all the nonprofits like the Tammy Lynn Center and Dorcas Ministries, White Oak Foundation. These organizations are the ones that are making a huge impact with these dollars, and so we should be very thankful that we have those partners to work with.
Very good.
Did you want to make a comment?
Well, I think every one of these organizations that we're getting some funding here are really, really worthwhile. And so I support the proposal. But I think Morgan joining our staff is a big addition that between now and next year, I understand you're going to be looking at the process a little more thoroughly than we have in the past. Excuse me. And looking at the scoring a little differently maybe. So I look forward to seeing the results of what goes on in the next year. But I certainly support this proposal. I think these organizations are wonderful.
Very good. We ready for a motion?
Well, I was just going to, before I make a motion, I was going to also thank Morgan and the team that I'm sure you worked with, because you were only here a couple of weeks by the time you had to put the staff report together. So I'm hopeful and would imagine that you had some help with that. I'm also really thankful for our council that sees the need for helping some of our most vulnerable citizens. It's hard to imagine that a teacher is considered someone who needs affordable housing, or, a firefighter or a police officer needs this kind of assistance. And I also think it's also great that $400,000 here is directed specifically for rehabilitation.
Absolutely.
So I look forward to seeing the survey results for our housing study and for the recommendations that Morgan and team will give us, and for us to be able to do the evidence-based decision, data-driven decision-making that we do best. And so I really support, and I'm happy for the support of the rest of council. And with that, I'll make a motion that we approve the CDBG Housing and Action Plan.
I'll second
that.
There's a motion and a
Wow,
second.
everybody second.
I'll make an additional comment.
Hold on.
I think, just to add a little context, I know Don's district and my district, we all represent Cary, I realize that, but we represent the older parts. And, but when I moved in to Scottish Hills, it was newer than Prestonwood is today. I moved into a neighborhood 30 years ago that was younger than Prestonwood is today. So that means 30 years from now, we're going to, if things go as they were, Prestonwood's going to have that, and I know that we just have the opportunity to know that the higher income houses are probably, they have the affordability to fix things up. But all these, when we've got the lowest end of what we've got in Cary, that's where this is really going to help. And I do appreciate what you said, Lori. I think supporting this rehab is a good thing.
We'll have more historic neighborhoods.
There you go.
Ms. Simpson, you were going to say something?
Yes, I was going to ask Ms. Bush if she could make clear that she's adopting staff's recommendation.
Oh,
for
and
the three
adopt it.
elements,
Thank
yeah.
you. There are three. So I approve amend my motion, approve the project proposal funding for the FY 1920 annual action plan, adopt the FY 1920 annual action plan, and authorize staff to submit the approved plan to HUD. Thank you.
And who is our second?
Second.
Okay. Jack was? Yep. Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Benson. We now move to our last discussion item. It was pulled from our consent agenda at the beginning of the meeting. 18 REZ 27 Weston PDD ONI 1C amendment. Assistant Planning Director Deborah Grannon will give a report. We're going to hear Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation, and we may take action.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a request to amend a portion of the Weston Plan Development District on 5.32 acres. The subject property is located south of Weston Parkway and north of the Wessex subdivision. The current zoning is Plan Development District Major. It's currently designated for office and institutional uses. No changes are proposed to the existing use on the site. The property is developed with a 52,711 square foot office building, which was previously the Hopewell Academy, and then prior to that, the Kimley Horn Engineering Firm. The current owner is Red Storm Entertainment. That's also the applicant. They're proposing to relocate from their current location in Center Green at Weston, move to this location. And with that and the interior renovations, they discovered the need for more parking. They came in, they met with staff, they looked at tabletop or structured parking. They found that that was not going to be feasible. They looked at where they could put additional parking on the site. They had a lot of land over on this side of the property, but they couldn't develop here because they were limited to how many parking spaces they could put in this area. So they looked at the streetscape area, and then they looked over at the western side of the property. They came in with this previous proposal that you saw, 57 new parking spaces, a reduction to the streetscape on Western Parkway from 50 to 30 feet for a portion. This portion would stay 50. A reduction to a 10-foot buffer on the western property line. And then they were also offering some mitigations to ensure that they supplemented the southern buffer to a Type A standard, provided a street side trail along Weston Parkway, and offered a condition not to increase the building size. So when this first came in, we heard from some adjacent property owners that there were gaps in the buffer that was approved back originally in 1988. Our development compliance team went out and saw that they needed to supplement that buffer. The applicant agreed to do that. There were questions about the streetscape on Weston Parkway, which, as you can see, is at a very high-performing standard, but anytime you talk about reducing a streetscape in this prominent area, that question comes up. So we clarified that there is a utility easement here, which is already devoid of vegetation. That's where they wanted to expand the parking, so they wouldn't be impacting any existing trees. And they provided a rendering to show how they're going to be supplementing that streetscape to even perform higher. Because you can put the parking or a travel lane in that utility easement, but you can't put any trees in a utility easement. So we thought things were going along pretty well, and this was scheduled to come to you last month. And then we heard right before the council meeting that there were still a few concerns from neighbors, especially in this area on the southern property, and the neighbors that were the closest to the project because of their close proximity to the site and the applicant's proposal to reduce this buffer over here to just 10 feet. So the applicant asked that this be postponed to tonight. They went to the site, they met with 3 adjacent property owners, staff joined them on site, and they changed their proposal to reduce the number of parking spaces, to take that buffer from 10 feet back to 20 feet, and then they went a step further. They offered a 55-foot average, 50-foot minimum buffer, and then they also added a condition, no illuminated signage anywhere on the southern side of the building or on this southern building on the side. And then they added one more condition to reduce the height of the parking lot lights. So what's before you now, rather than the 57 additional parking spaces, 42. They're still seeking that reduction in the streetscape. They've taken that side buffer back up to 20, the 55-foot average rear buffer, and then the signage and the parking lot restrictions. No increase in the building height. So according to the growth framework map, this is designated as an employment mixed-use campus. Staff's analysis is that this does comply with policies in the work, shape, and engage chapters of the Imagine Cary Community Plan, and that it locates this expanding firm in a strategic location and makes good transitions. And based on that compliance with those policies and the conditions that have been proposed by the applicant, staff finds that this is consistent with the community plan and does recommend this for approval. Mr. Evangelista will provide the comments from the Planning and Zoning Board.
Thanks, Deborah. We really didn't have much of anything. Once again, like with the last time I came up to speak to you, most of the action occurred post P&Z involvement. We just had a couple of questions, mostly about the setbacks and all, but we were pretty much happy, as you can see by the 7-0. So for our participation here, this would have been a consent item.
Questions for Mr. Evangelista? Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Grine?
This concludes staff's presentation, and the applicant is still present if you have any questions for them as well.
Mr. Urha, I know you had interest in pulling this for discussion. If you had some comments you'd like to make.
Sure. I guess first comment is apologies to Mr. Loyak and the others for having to wait through this whole meeting instead of being able to go home after the consent agenda had we not pulled it. So I appreciate that. I saw you waiting there quite patiently. And secondly, I appreciate the recent discussions, the productive discussions that have gone on between the applicant and the neighbors. A lot of improvements were made, and I thank everybody who was involved in doing that. But despite all of the improvements, and there were many, I'm still going to be stubborn about this, I guess. The thing that bothers me most is the reduction in the streetscape from 50 to 30, especially with a reduction like this on what I consider one of Cary's signature streets, Weston Parkway, and especially when the reduction is necessary to increase impervious parking surface, and especially when the site itself already has parking in excess of what the town requires. So it just bothers me a bit to see this, and I appreciate the improvements that were made. Every improvement that was made was wonderful, but I'm still stuck on that streetscape reduction, and I certainly don't want this to set any kind of precedent going forward. So I guess bottom line is I respectfully probably going to vote against this tonight.
Other questions or comments?
I'll just follow up with it. I too share the concerns of reducing the streetscape buffer on Weston Parkway. It is a very special street. That said, where it's being reduced, there's not any trees there right now anyway, and it's a utility easement. And even if there were trees there, they would get removed at some point in the future to do utility work. So considering the efforts that the applicant has gone through to satisfy the neighbors' concerns, which I applaud you for that, I really do. To be a good neighbor. I mean, that's kind of what Cary is. It's people caring about the community, being good neighbors, working with one another, trying to do the right thing, you know? So just really, really thank them for that. A growing Cary company, somebody we're trying to help. I just, the pros outweigh the cons to me. So I too would echo the comment that this, in my opinion, is not precedent setting. We are going to continue to judge each case like this on its merits, and just because we may do for one, we don't do for the others. But all that said, I will be supporting this proposal.
Other comments?
I agree, no precedent.
We ready for a motion?
I'd make a motion that we approve 18 RAZ 27 Weston PDD, and that we approve the statement of consistency as attached to the staff report for 18 RAZ 27 and the rezoning for 18 RAZ 27 Weston PDD O&I 1C amendment.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you, Ms. Granite. That concludes the items we have on the agenda. There is no closed session, so I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion and a second and a third. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.